Welcome to the Lighthome Sustainable Design podcast series. We talk with the architects and builders about green design and homes that really suit the way we love to live. Ambassador Carolyn McFarland about her latest Lighthome project, which is House for Toby. And House for Toby is a project or a home that's been built in Tathra, which is on the New South Wales south coast, isn't it, Carolyn?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
So why did you choose it?
Look, I chose it because it is a house for a client called Toby, for these particular clients, and Toby actually lives in a wheelchair. And this house is designed for someone with a disability, but it isn't a house that looks like it's been designed for someone with a disability. And some of the pictures, when you look at it, there's a few clues about that it isn't quite, a house for an able-bodied person. But apart from that, it's just a beautiful piece of architecture, and it shows that you don't need, a house doesn't need to look like an institution for someone, who has got a disability. It can be a beautiful piece of architecture.
And it is a beautiful piece of architecture, and let's talk about the architecture itself in a second, but before we do, so what challenges does it pose when you're designing for someone with a disability?
Well, you have to think about access is really important, how they'll use the house in a different way. So in this particular house, all the living is designed upstairs. So it is a two-storey house, but it is designed, all his living is upstairs. He accesses the upstairs by a ramp externally, and internally there's a lift. But also there is a stair for other people who come to visit him. I mean, he obviously has, friends and things like that. But there's a climbing wall, and it's part of his physiotherapy and trying to keep, his movement in his upper body and his strength. There is a climbing wall. So in the photos, you can sort of see the little timber blobs, and it's a practical climbing wall.
How fantastic!
Yeah, and also he spends when he's not in his wheelchair, he actually spends a lot of time on the floor. So, the floor finishes are really important. In the bathroom, there's a timber floor. It's heated for the floor because he does spend a lot of time. If you look in the kitchen, you'll see what the kitchen sink area is actually a lower bench top, so he can access that through on his wheelchair. But it's designed with a hydraulic lift in it. So it can be raised up and down depending on who's using the kitchen. So another thing with designing for someone with a disability is that it's about the future. So at the moment he lives by himself, but in the future he'll need a carer. So the downstairs area has been designed for a second living space for a carer to move in there. So you've got to think about not only how they are at the moment, but and where they need to be in the future.
And I imagine too that there must be extra width in a lot of things, like I guess doorways and other openings because of the wheelchair. Is that right?
That's right. I mean, there is a disabled code that you design to, and yes, the widths of corridors, the way the doors open, where you position your light switches, a whole range of things that you just need a bit more space for it. So you've got to think about these while you're planning it, and it doesn't mean if you incorporate them, it doesn't mean it has to look like a house that's designed for a wheelchair. So it's a really clever design. It is.
And so just talking about that, then obviously, that's part of what the architect has done well, I guess, is to not have it look like an institution, as you said. But what else do you think, in general architectural terms, has the architect done well here? Michael Marshman.
Beautiful. The use of materials. Again, I mean, I suppose every time I sort of pick something, I always talk about the use of materials. I suppose it's my bent. The way that the lighting's been done, it's not a typical lighting. In the stair, you'll see there's like a light box that's up the top. In the kitchen, they've used sort of funky sort of spotlights. They've used a different thing rather than just putting a single light in the ceiling. It's part of the design. It's part of the joinery, and I just think it makes the space feel special when someone uses it. The other thing, to go back on a point about designing for people with just designing this place, is that the walls, the lower line, the walls are lined with fibre cement sheeting, which is not typical. And it's clear finish, the lower levels, and that's for sort of impact, for the impact of the wheelchair. And also there's some timber wall paneling, which is a structural timber panel, and again it's about impact. It's got to be more durable than plasterboard. So things like, when I say the materiality, they've used the constraint of trying to find materials which they need to use for maintenance, but they've picked ones and they've made them look special, and you don't look at it and go, oh well, that's because he might sort of run into it one day with his wheelchair. So
yes. So in terms of how the home's been built to suit the climate, and in fact just talk us through a little bit about the climate down on the south coast, because presumably it does get quite cold from time to time.
It does get quite cold, and I've spoken at length with the architect about this. They use, again, the lightweight construction really suits with lots of insulation in the external walls. They don't need to provide cooling in the summer months because it doesn't get that warm, and the cross ventilation is enough for the cooling. But what their thing is the heating. So they do put in sort of heating elements, so either in-floor heating or gas heating. But again, the lightweight construction, you put mass insulation in the walls, and that keeps the heat in the winter and the heat out in the summer. They also like using the lightweight construction, and one of the benefits of doing that is soundproofing internally as well. So one thing you can do between bathrooms and bedrooms and things, you can actually then put in a good amount of insulation, soundproof insulation, to stop the noise transfer. Again, it's down on the south coast. There's issues with access for materials. Some of the heavy things that you just can't get down into the area because it's sort of slightly remote. And also it is an area where the vernacular is the beach house, the fibro beach house. And this particular architect, a lot of his work is the lightweight and timber cladding and fibre cement cladding and things like that, because it's what's typically being used, and the builders are happy using it. It's and he just likes the way that it fits in with the traditional vernacular of the area.
And so, just from that point of view, I mean, how was this home from a cost to construct perspective? I mean, I'm assuming that with all of the extra things that needed to be done to it to take care of being built for someone with a disability, that increased the cost, but maybe using lightweight material kind of traded off in some respect. Is that the case?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, this house has got a lift in it. It's got, it'll have, higher specification for some of its products, like the bathroom and things like that, for to accommodate for Toby, and also the kitchen with the hydraulic lifting kitchen bench. But again, it's offset by the cost of construction, which they can keep down because of ease of materials and ease of building with it. So a lot of it is about familiarity, and if you are doing something like this, to have builders, able to, they're happy to use timber framing, and they know the method, they know the construction, they can get materials on site, they can lift them, they don't need cranes. That all brings the price down, particularly in these more remote areas.
And is it built on a slab or on bearers and joists?
Downstairs is on a slab. Upstairs is actually it is on bearers and joists, and so they've used then the flooring underneath it is the tongue and groove Skypon secure flooring. So they put that, so they put bearers and joists, they put the fibre cement sheeting down as the structural floor, they put flooring on, and then they put the timber boarding on top of that for the heating. So. Okay.
And in relation to sustainability, why don't you talk us through any particular features in that regard?
They've put solar panels on the project. There's also water tanks for water storage, which has top up from mains water when they need it. Again, a lot of it is about the systems that you don't see. So, it's got the cross ventilation, open spaces, and they do have the electric floor heating, which is offset by the solar panels. But again, that's a particular requirement for this client because he does spend a lot of time, on the floor. So to make himself comfortable, then, that was really important.
And, I'm guessing from your comments, particularly about the local vernacular, that you would have been hard-pressed to achieve the same result with heavyweight materials.
Oh, yes, and if you look at the site as well, it is on a sloping site, particularly down at the beaches, you've got, sand. It's a difficult ways to put in, a full height brick, 2-story, heavyweight construction. So, there is the base is, has got blockwork walls, it's got a concrete slab, so, the base is solid, but then, to go up and go to 2 stories, it makes a lot more construction sense in this sort of area with access and availability of materials.
So anything else you'd like to add about this very lovely project?
Oh yes, well I just want to a few things that I forgot to mention in materiality. There's the hidden, well not the hidden, but the fish tank, which if someone looks, I think in the stairwell picture, you'll see that the fish, there's a fish tank there. So the client was particularly fond of fish, and so he has this sort of feature fish tank, which is not a typical feature fish tank. Also going up the ramp, at the access ramp is there's a little window in the ramp, and you can look down and there's a turtle pond. And again, so you can see, sort of going through. So it's about the experiences walking through the space. They find things which are a little bit different. And just to say, this project did win an award at the recent New South Wales Country Division awards and it was a Terming Mesh Award for use of timber within a building. So so it wasn't, it was about the materials and things like that. So it's just a really clever design. Something, again, when you first look at it, you don't realise it's for a client who has a disability, and I just think it's just a lovely building and a lovely home for someone to live in.
Thank you, Carolyn, for your choice.
That's all right. Thank you.